Alright, what's up everybody? If you watched my Bankhead Dualsport video, you'll recognize we're back at Bankhead. So we had put out a Facebook post, me and some friends, and thought we had us a good group of about, get the choke turned off, maybe 8 to 10 people was going to show up. And like most rides that you try to plan, it ended up only being 2 of us. A guy that we normally ride with on the KTM 1090. It was his idea to come riding today, and he ended up getting called into work, and then everyone else was strangers to us just from the Facebook group, and they all overslept and sent us a message and said they're just going to go ride closer to home. So it is me and Mr. Brent Wolf on a KTM 690. Of course, I'm on the Dr650, the only off-road capable bike I have at the moment. So last time we were here, there was an issue with one of the riders in the group going down, and didn't get injured, but was banged up a little bit. And so we called it quits 2.5 miles in to a 10-mile trail. So the idea was we'll come back today and finish off, get the whole 10-mile loop in. So that's what we're here to do. Anyone who's ever rode out here and may be familiar with it, we're riding it in the counterclockwise direction, which is the harder direction of the two. But I figure we'll manage just fine. And I guess with it being football season and hunting season coming up, the parking lot was empty. We waited around just to make sure nobody was going to show up that was planning on showing up to ride with us. And one other guy showed up, but was not planning on riding with us. We offered him to join us, but he said he's a fairly new rider. It's like his 3rd time riding, and he didn't want to slow us down, which we're not exactly racers by any means, so that'd have probably been fine, but I didn't want to push anybody to do something they wasn't comfortable with, especially when you're just starting out. Sometimes, it's nice to have people to ride with, but at the same time, it's nice to just be able to go out on your own and kind of learn your own abilities. You don't want to be out by yourself doing anything too extreme. But if you're, a somewhat competent individual, it's sometimes nice to get out on your own with no other influence and get familiar with the bike. And it ain't even got to be a bike. I did a similar thing one time with my Honda Pioneer side-by-side. I literally bought it, and within 2 hours went with some buddies that had just Polaris Rangers, and we were doing some trail riding. And so the first time I rode it was on a trail. Nothing crazy, a little more aggressive than trails like this, but still trails all the same. And I just wasn't sure what the machine was capable of. I had not had a chance to play with the machine, even on my own property or anything, to kind of get used to it. And it was a little nerve-wracking once I had gotten the machine back home and rode some trails on my own that I was familiar with, so I knew how other vehicles, other four-wheelers and such, responded on those trails. I could see, direct comparison. So there is something to be said for when you get a new machine, just, putting around on it kind of on your own, at your own pace, just to learn the machine a little bit. And that is a giant spider. You can't see it. That's one thing I hate about being the first one on the trail any given day. Spiders. I tried to trick Brent into leading so that way he would wipe out all the spider webs, but he didn't fall for that old trick. He's in his 40s, so he knew better. In his 40s and been riding his whole life, so he definitely knew better than to take me up on that offer. Probably knew I had some sinister motive behind it. Be a couple sections. Luckily, it ain't rained in a while, so there's not gonna be a ton of mud. There's a couple mud holes that are like unavoidable on the 4-wheeler,
yeah.
But on this, you'll be able to skirt the side. But whew.
Less this time than what there was the last time we come here.
Yeah, I think so too. It ain't rained in a couple weeks, I feel like, other than just a sprinkle. So.
I tell you what, I haven't seen in a while is photo hunt.
Yeah, it's setting on right now. I checked it before I left just to see, and it's setting on like an outdoor digital thermometer, like a bank or something, below like 50 degrees since it's starting to cool off. But no one's knocked it out yet, so. Yep, so if you tuned into my last video where I was here, the bridge right there is where we turned around. So this is all new territory as far as 2 wheels are concerned. I did come up here and ride the whole trail system on a Honda Rancher ATV, 4-wheeler, quad, whatever you want to call it. Just brought the wife out that day to tool around, so I know what I'm in for. But it'll all be new on 2 wheels, and there will end up being some kind of technical sections, but nothing too crazy. The 2-wheel drive Honda 420 Rancher can do it. Just about any dirt bike could probably do it. Kid's XR100 or something. I could bring one of those out here and ride along at the same pace I'm riding along on this bike, or I would on any other bike. So trying to stay out of the mud. I honestly kind of wish I had a 15-tooth front sprocket. That way I wouldn't be back and forth between first and second gear. 15-tooth is stock countershaft sprocket size or tooth count for the Dr650. I'm running a 14, and the bike still does plenty fine on the highway with the 14. You're not revving the piss out of the engine to run 70 miles an hour, and it'll vary by trails, speed. If I was on a tighter trail, this 14 would be perfect, but I kind of find myself going back and forth between the first and second gear. Alright, here's one kind of technical section. It's not super bad, it's just solid. You know, rock, almost like creek bed. Still having to dodge all them spider webs. Four and a half miles in, so almost to the halfway point. So I'm making a lot better time than I anticipated, but I can't say I'm not surprised since it's just two of us. Yeah, I was expecting at least 6 people to show up, probably closer to 8 or 9, and then it ends up just being 2 of us. So the speed at which we're riding is relatively unchanged, except for possibly if someone went down. But when you stop to catch your breath for a minute and you got a group of 10, you kind of expect to be there for a minute. Yeah, I was planning on hitting up right here and then I made it look pretty easy over there, but that's probably one of the roughest spots if you're on a four-wheeler. Side by side probably wouldn't be that bad because you've got the extra length wheelbase and you got the width, track width. But on a little four-wheeler, that spot gets a little sketchy. It ain't too bad, but that's one of the rougher spots I knew we were going to come up on. And that spot's pretty much right at the halfway point, 4.9 miles. I'm gonna have to put a battery in this DR soon, or maybe it'll hold out until I sell it come springtime, but she's getting a little weak. It's got one of those like lithium anti-gravity batteries. I don't know about y'all, but I never have been one to spend that kind of money on a battery. Every bike I've ever had that had a lithium battery in it, like previous owner put one in it, there's been multiple bikes I've owned that had them in it. They all were kind of just weak to crank. And this one's no exception, which this is a, big thumper, so it's kind of to be expected. But even on smaller bikes, my DR200 that I had, I'm pretty sure it had one in it that somebody had put in it, and it was it's just super weak to turn the engine over. And I know there's tricks when whenever you turn the key on to crank it for the first time, you're supposed to kind of let it warm up for a minute. It's kind of the verbiage that gets used, I think. And but like, I've already been out here riding, the engine's warm, and it doesn't make a difference. It's still kind of weak to start. So I've never spent the money on one of the anti-gravity or lithium, regardless of brand, one of the lithium batteries. And I don't have a charger for them. A lot of them take a specific charger, and you gotta buy that if you ever want to be able to trickle charge it, because you're not going to be riding for a period of time. So There he is. I can tell you right now, if you're sitting down going through this sand that's out here, and the front end just likes to push. I don't know if it's the 244 tires. Standing up, it's fine, it tracks great. But if you're sitting down, I don't know if it just changes the balance of the bike or what exactly it is, but I have noticed that about, I don't want to say these tires because it might not be specific to the tire, but it might be just the bike. But sitting down on the old girl, the front end just pushes through the sand. So if you stand up, you don't even have to shift your weight back. You just, the act of standing alone, kind of, the front end picks up, glides over the sand better, and also tracks better. Spider web to the face, specifically the eye. Ooh. Yeah, I think so. Maybe it won't bite me again. I felt like a briar poking me in my palm. Don't see nothing in my glove, don't see nothing stuck to the grip, and don't even see a spot on my hand. Trails like these is where I kind of wish I still had the CRF 250F. Just perfect trails. You click that thing up in third, even second and third, and just cruise along all day. You know, I've talked about in other videos that I plan on getting rid of the DR and getting a bigger adventure bike now that my wife's kind of getting keen on doing more riding, more two-up riding, and but something like the V-Strom 800 isn't going to be, it's never, as long as I own it, it would never see like this trail system. So with that in mind, I mean, it could do it, but I wouldn't want to do it and risk dropping it and, you know, bashing it up real bad. But I do plan on going to a smaller Dualsport. I've been looking for small air-cooled. Like, I really like the DR200. You know, it's kind of gutless, but also I wouldn't mind an XT250. It unfortunately doesn't have the fuel range the DR has. DR200's got like an impressive 3.5 gallon tank or something, and the XT's got 2.6, I think, and it's fuel injected, so there's no reserve. You just got a dummy light you got to put a little faith in working properly. So but I think the XT is definitely a better machine, got a little more grunt, a little better for the highway, but also KLX, you know, the newer KLX 230, I've been seeing some deals on those in my neck of the woods. You know, the used market's not demanding a ton for those. You know, in that low $3,000 range. But also the KLX 250, the liquid cooled 250 KLX. You know, it's been around forever. I've owned one before. The 300s are fairly new, so they're still demanding a little higher money. But the 250s, they're a dime a dozen. So I might end up with something like that. That'd be more capable, a little bit more capable motor, and definitely more capable suspension than the XT 250 or the DR 200. But for riding like this, the uninverted forks, they're fine. You know, they're not anything to write home about, and I'd maybe have bottomed them a time or two, but you know, nothing atrocious. So I don't know, we'll see what we can find when it comes time to pull the trigger on that, on selling the Rebel, selling the DR650, and getting, I would say, a more proper Dualsport DR650. I'm not saying it's not a proper Dualsport, but if you're going to be doing a lot of off-road riding, it's a bit cumbersome, you know. And all that varies depending on skill. I'm small, I'm short, and that makes it a bit cumbersome off-road for me if I get into a sketchy spot, as opposed to something lighter weight and maybe an inch shorter seat height. This bike having the Cogent dynamic suspension front and rear and being set up for a 200-pound rider when I only weigh 160, and it's got an aftermarket seat concept seat, I think it boasts an extra inch or more of seat height that the stock DR650 doesn't claim. Speaking of Cogent suspension, get us a couple jumps in right there. Woo, turtle! I managed to dodge him. I don't know if Brent did or not. Don't know how deep some of these mud holes are. Some of them, I mean, you can just look through and tell they're not that bad. I did go through one on the four-wheeler when I was out here with the old lady, and man, it was deep. I thought we were going to be getting off the push, being that my Rancher is just you know, two-wheel drive Rancher 420, and the tires are not aggressive at all. They're the original tires from like 2007. They're not bald, but they got 600 hours on them, so you know, they don't have a lot of tread, and that might be part of the reason that we didn't get off and have to push. We wasn't digging ourselves a hole. We were just kind of slowly inching along. So anyway, I'm trying to avoid as many of the mud holes, the big mud holes where I can't tell how deep it is, because like I said, we went through one or two of them on the four-wheeler. You can't really dodge them, and they were deep in some spots. So sitting at the 8-mile mark, so we got roughly 2 miles to go. I can't remember if it's a 10-mile loop or an 11-mile loop, but either way, we're coming up on the end of it. So I say coming up on the end of it like it's right here. 2 miles riding like this takes, you know, takes 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes. So I think we pulled onto the trailhead at 840 to 845. I'd go with probably 845. We were talking to the guy in the parking lot with the CRF 250F, and I remember looking, it was 837, and we still hadn't put our helmets on, but we did shortly after that and took off. So 840, 845, pulling through the Trailhead gate. We'll see just how long it takes us. We might go hit the 5-mile loop. I've never touched the 5-mile loop at all. Don't have a clue how rough it is. On the map, it looks like it's a lot less flowy and more technical. A lot more like 90-degree type turns and switchbacks, so it might not be as fast of a flowing trail. But I'm not sure yet what the plan is. We'll figure it out when we get back to the truck and take a proper 20-30 minute break or something if we decide we're going to keep riding. If you had a lot of smooth 2-track trail like this around you though, man, the DR is perfect. You just first gear, second gear, it doesn't really care whether you're revving it higher in first or lugging it in second. Just cruise along. It is heavy, but it flows well. One thing about having a heavier bike is when you do get into rough terrain and kind of bouncing off rocks and in ruts, a heavier bike's harder to handle in one sense, but it's also easier to handle in the sense that it's not getting knocked about by the ground as much. You know, if you hit something that's kind of going to flick you sideways or cause your weight to shift to one side, you know, the heavier the bike, it's a bit more sluggish to make that move. So if you're the one trying to make it carve the corners, it's more weight for you to toss around. But if you hit an undulation in the trail, a rock, a rut, it's also, you know, doesn't jolt as fast when it's moving against you either. So it has its positives, has its negatives. Just depends on which way you're looking at it. I mean, the second you go from sitting to standing on this thing through the sand, immediate difference. And I mean, of course, it's going to make a difference shifting the weight to the pegs, but you know, on some dirt bikes and stuff, it's just, it's not really that noticeable. But on this fat girl, for whatever reason, the geometry of the frame and the neck and the front wheel, or just the tire choice, whew, I still almost tucked it right there while I was standing. But when you go from sitting to standing, you do notice an immediate improvement, more so than I would say you would notice on a standard dirt bike. I'm also not aired down terribly low. I'm not at highway pressures, but I'm at about 15 or 16 psi in the front and 20 in the back. I know a lot of people on the DR Facebook group run lower than that, especially considering I've got rim locks and, you know, the necessary upgrades to make if you're going to be running lower pressures. I've got them. So I could run even lower, and that may make a difference, better, worse, who knows. Ah, showing off, huh? Well guys, we're at 10.2 miles, so we're narrowing down on the end. Had a good run there, didn't meet any traffic. So it is a multi-directional trail, multi-use, bicycles, ATVs, dirt bikes, side-by-sides, narrow side-by-sides, 50-inch trail width, so you gotta have one of the trail machine side-by-sides. And that is it. Actually, I lied to you, that's not it. We got more in store. Haven't thought to wipe off the lens. Y'all probably covered in spider webs too. Here we go, back to the end or the start. Let's see what we got. 11.5 miles. So, whew, take us a break and decide if we want to keep riding or not.